Today we're going to be exploring our hands and the many ways that we use our hands. Before we get started on land and how those teachings of our hands can be applied to our everyday life, I'd like us to take a moment to just connect with our hands, taking 5 breaths, looking at our hands with curiosity and wonder. So let's do that. Looking at the different ways our hands may move. And taking one more breath in, just honoring these beautiful things that connect us. Thanks for doing that with me. I sometimes forget how important it is just to ground and also look at our bodies, specifically our hands, because we use our hands for so many different things, to pick things up, to carry things, to share our love with other people, and to also share our emotions and our feelings with our hands. I learned somewhere that our hands are connected to our heart. So our hands are an expression of our heart and our love, and they can also be an expression of rage and anger. There's just so many uses that we have with our hands, and how often we might not consider the ways we use our hands. Um, we may not consider the intention of our hands, what we're trying to convey with our hands. It comes second nature, especially if you've had hands your whole life, right? And lately I've been thinking, like, how am I using my hands? What am I grabbing? And how often I grab technology, how often I grab even plastic, like opening my produce, and how often I may use my hands to, I don't know, pick things up that are not natural, like not from land. So I decided to take myself outside, and if you watched our last gathering, that I've been really disconnected from land in so many different ways. Um, and land is a part of all of us, I believe, and it is my greatest teacher, and I love land so much. So for me to be so disconnected from land this past season, um, it's been challenging, um, and a lot of like self doubt and a lot of thoughts about how I'm showing up. Even shame and anger and rage have been coming up, um, and also like thoughts that are blocking me from actually going outside in nature and kind of wanting to lock me in and caging me in, which is an interesting feelings to have when I'm in nature. I feel like the most like myself, so it makes me curious, those thoughts, and just something to wonder about for myself. So I took myself out and I wanted to use my hands, wanted to get into nature and feel different textures that I'm not used to. So I went out and I collected different items from land and sat with land. Took off my gloves. It was a cold day when I went, and I decided to take my gloves off and just like really hold stuff. And I have been considering, like, yeah, what am I holding with these hands? And how disconnected I have been feeling from my hands, and the intention behind those hands. So, touching earth really helped me to come back and also listen to the thoughts that run through my mind. I realized that coming back to land and being away from it for so long in like a solo way and like very like immersed in it, I noticed how hard it was for me to disconnect from technology, from me to disconnect from like all of the thoughts that are running through my mind. Um, and that kind of brought up like sadness for me because how often do I like just get stuck here in the spiraling thoughts or get stuck in just going through life without any like being present or being watching and wondering and showing up in a way that's like seeing the world like I haven't been here before. I always come back to when I watch babies learning and how invested they are in their hands. Like that's their first, that's our first toy. Our first teacher is our hands, and how babies can be on their back and just like look at their hands for 30, 40 minutes if you know they're like on or like dedicated time. Obviously, there's movement throughout that, but I have been listening to this and not listening to this. And touching earth reminds me of where I come from, where we all come from, that we are a part of land, and that when we can come back to it, how magical, how charged, how full we can feel. I know that that's how I feel after I'm on land. And it makes me curious, like, why I have a hard time doing that. Like, I have a hard time making space for that. And knowing that that feels so good and so honored and so, like, fresh to be with my hands and touching things that I want to touch. How that feels so good, you know? And how often, like, I believe, like, when I touch my phone, I'm like, oh, like, I'm getting something out of this. But after I touch my phone, I feel depleted and I can feel even more alone. But when I'm touching land or on land or touching natural pieces, how that feels differently. So, yeah, I feel like this is something I want to continue to explore is just hands. And slowing down, being intentional with how I'm using my hands on my daily life. And even, and maybe that is exploring like how to do things differently. Like, I love to knit. Like, I'm knitting this right now and feeling these textures. I'm like, yes, this feels so good. And also, like something interesting about like knitting is um like the reason why I started knitting was because I wanted to do something with my hands that wasn't technology based. It was cold out. I wanted to have a project I could do inside. Um, and I am learning so much different things about wool and yarn through this process. And I had like a whole deep dive this weekend where I was looking for yarn for a specific project, and I wanted it to be this color of a trout lily, which is one of a spring wildflower that grows in the Midwest. And I think it sometimes grows in the Pacific Northwest too, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe. I know trilliums do. But in any case, there's this one trout lily that blooms pink. And so I really wanted to make a sweater that reminded me of that pink. So I went on a deep dive with yarn, and I found that like I don't want to use yarn that's not natural. There's something about when you touch like superwash wool, which is wool, but it's um, made in a different way. And I'm not going to pretend like I know any of this because I don't. But when I touch it, I might love the color, but the texture isn't, it doesn't feel real. And I guess that's what I'm after with my hands is like what's real and sharing that realness, being with that realness. So, yeah, I say that because I find that I'm gravitating towards more of these natural things to feel in my hands and to find intention behind what I'm doing and making and creating and how I'm showing my heart with my hands through my craft, through my like creativity and honoring that because I feel like as a human we might feel or as an adult, I guess I should say, we might feel like we are trapped or caged in. At least that's how I feel, and I feel like I'm not alone in that. And all I want is meaning. All I want is to be connected to this craft of like creating with my hands, creating and feeling and coming back to what is real instead of what I think should be real or what I see is real. That's like that's that's something I've been like thinking about. It's just feeling like I live in a world full of robots that are just doing instead of being, and coming back to my hands and creating is reminding me that I'm not a robot and I don't want to live my life in a way that feels like it's not true to my heart, my hands, my soul. So, yeah, and we leave this here because I could ramble on. But, yeah, I hope that you take some time to connect with your hands and that you find some ways to feel land today and back into your heart. I'll see you next time.